Hi, friends, and welcome back. Today, I'm going to be talking about a word that has been swirling around in the media quite a bit, thanks to Jada Pinkett Smith and her new book and her book tour, which I haven't read. And I'm probably going to go ahead and add that to my reading list. I am just completely fascinated by the human experience, and this thing that we're doing called life is not the easiest thing to do. And so I have gotten to a place where I am able to extend grace to everybody. I've had my own tumultuous journey, and so I can relate to living a life that is not exactly what you expected or intended. And I think that that's a lot of people's story. That's why so many of us kind of embarked on a journey to spirituality, or started to look for and find the spiritual path so that we can make sense of life. And that's what crisis does. You know, crisis kind of comes to shake us up and to rattle our tree a little bit, or shake our tree and let us know, hey, there is a different way that you can live. There are things that you aren't seeing, things that you don't know about yourself and about the way life works. And so I'm grateful that she's sharing her story. And I know all the gossip is out there and all the judgment and the criticism. And I'm just going to ask that you just not do that. You know, life is hard for all of us. And so we're all going to make mistakes. Some of us just, unfortunately, have to make them publicly. And so for that reason, I extend all the grace in the world to her. And I'm appreciative that she's sharing her story, because so many people, including myself, at one time or another, have missed the mark. And so we need to see the example of others. So, having said that, today's topic is about worthiness. The name of her book is titled Worthy, and I thought, what a great name for a book. That is a word that you hear a lot when it comes to personal development and self improvement. It's always swirling around. But I don't know that people really stop and think about what that concept means. What does it mean to be worthy? And so I'm going to take you down a little bit of a path here, and try to unpack that word a little bit. And I'm going to ask that you think about the word worthy in your own life and find out, what is that definition for you? What does that mean? How is that showing up in your life? Or how does that shift and change the way that you show up in life? So let's get into it. When I think of the word worthy, unlike most people, the word worthy just means that I am. It just means that I'm me. And we have gotten to this place where the concept of worthiness is something that we kind of throw around as like a buzzword, or something that we're all kind of working towards. And I'm going to ask you to look at that in a little bit of a different light, or I'm going to shine a little bit of a different perspective on that. When I think of worthiness, I just think of being born, being a human being, just me, just I am, just being here as I sit, as I move, just me. No matter what I do, no matter how many videos I do, no matter what my career is, no matter who I'm married to, worthy, it just is. And so when I was younger, I didn't really have a concept of what worthiness was. It was only as I started down the spiritual path and as I got older that I started to think about that word in terms of just being a human being, being alive and being here means that I am worthy. And that is the truth. It's not really something that we're all trying to work towards or become. As with most things on the spiritual path, it is what you are. And so our job is to really remove the negative mindsets and thoughts around our lack of worthiness, or our self denial of that concept. And so when you remove all that stuff, you're just going to find that that it's there. And so I'm here to tell you that the word worthy is just what you are right now, here, sitting, wherever you are, listening to me, or driving in your car, or whatever you're doing. The concept of worthy is just you. And so let me give you an example, and then we'll talk about what happens and how we forget how worthy we are. It feels even a little off to me saying the word worthy, because when I think about it and conceptually, it seems like something that we're trying to get or trying to make or trying to become. So even when I hear myself say that out loud, it's a little bit jarring, um, because I've come to understand the word worthy or worthiness just in a different way. So think about when you were a little kid, as far back as you can remember. And I have memories probably from around the age of 4. If you can go back that far and pick a favorite memory of you playing with a toy or playing with your friends, the concept of worthy was there. It wasn't missing. Think about a baby. Think about a baby being born, and he is in his playpen and he wants to get out, and he starts screaming and crying because he knows he's worthy. He is the center of his own universe. We are all born that way. We are all born knowing that we are worthy and that we are the center of our own universe, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that says there's no diminishment to who I am, right? That I show up as me, and I feel that I matter. So when I think of worthiness, those are the kinds of concepts that come to mind for me now. And so it really does feel a little awkward for me to even talk about it or to try to explain it, because I think that we all think that worthy is something that we're pursuing. And I'm going to say that worthiness really is more of a remembrance. It is just how you show up. It's just how a baby shows up in the world. When he wants his snack, he wants his snack. He doesn't think, well, I should wait, or mama's busy, or I've asked 3 times already. He doesn't do any of that. He wants a snack, and he's going to scream as loud as he can until he gets his snack, until someone answers him. And so as we get older, we don't want to move through the world like that, but that notion or idea of who and what we are, we should have kept that. We should have allowed that to remain with us all this time. And so our work now is simply to remember. So what happens to the little baby that is screaming for his snack until his mother comes? He's going to make her stop what she's doing to come and cater to him. And what happens to us as we move along the path that allows us to simply forget that we are valuable, that we do matter? And life starts to happen to us when we start to get around 5 or 6, or probably more around the age of 7. And we get introduced to the outside world a little more. Mama's kind of drawing her hands back, and we get to teeter-totter out of the door, and we make friends, and we go to school. And even some parenting, unfortunately, can cause us to forget that worthiness. So I've seen parents, and this was very common when I was growing up. This was just the parenting style back then. Just, don't speak if you're not spoken to. When you're crying, they did things like, shut up before I give you something to cry about. In other words, when you at some age started to demand and stand in your worthiness, you were spanked or you were punished for it. So all of that starts to condition us away from our remembrance of the fact that we matter. And so it's a tricky thing. It's definitely a tricky thing for a parent because you don't want your child to grow up thinking that the world just has to cater to them. So you do have to kind of intervene. But I think that the trick for a parent is to get a child to understand their value, but also get them to understand how they need to move and show up in the world. And that's not always the easiest thing. Our parents did the best that they could. I was raised by a single mom, and she definitely did the best that she could. So, we don't fault people for making mistakes because we all do. And so, the unfortunate thing about that is that when it comes to how we were raised, the effects of that can be lifelong, and they can really change the trajectory of our lives. So it is a big deal. If you are a parent, try to figure out how to strike that balance of letting a kid know that you matter, you are valuable, but maybe you can wait a little bit until I finish what I'm doing over here, and just try to find balance with their understanding of I matter, but there's also just a way that life works that I kind of need to learn, or that a child needs to kind of learn. So, just to give you that as an aside, but that's what happens to us. We simply forget, when that first kid tells you that your clothes are not as good as their clothes are, or when you get that first rejection from a boy or girl that you liked in school. All that stuff starts to chip away at our remembrance of the fact that we're worthy. Now, if your parents do a good job, like I said, in striking a balance and getting you to understand that you matter, getting you to understand that you are worthy, that you are valuable, when you get those hits out the door, out there in the street, they're not going to do near as much damage as they could, but most of us just aren't getting that. And so that's why you have us here now. Everybody's pursuing this word called worthiness, and Jada Pinkett just wrote a book about it, is because it's a conversation that is new. We weren't raised to understand our worth and our value, and our parents weren't raised to understand their worth and their value. So here we all are trying to remember, trying to figure out what that word means for us, and beginning to stand in that. Now, you don't want to move through the world being a jerk. That's not what I'm saying here at all. But there is definitely a time to stand in your power. There is definitely a time to know that your needs are important and that you need to be heard. And again, striking that balance with the other person's needs, there's a way to do that. There's a way to stand up for who you are and at the same time honor another human being. It is always possible. And so for me, that is what worthiness looks like. Worthiness looks like I don't diminish myself for anybody. I'm going to stand up for what I want. I'm going to be heard. I'm going to make sure that my needs are being considered. And at the same time, I'm going to honor your worthiness, right? I am going to allow you to express yourself. And I'm going to take into consideration what your needs are or what your wants are in the moment. And I'm going to see if they're a match. And if they're not a match, then sometimes my own worthiness and knowing that and standing in that just says, hey, no one's at fault here, but it's just not a match. And so then I'm just going to move on. So I want you to think about that concept of worthiness. I want you to think of it in terms of not something that you're trying to pursue out there. I want you to think of it in terms of who and what you are. And so you're going to spend your time trying to remove the blocks to your memory that just by the very fact that you were born, that you are in this flesh, blood, and bone body, you're worthy. It is what it is. And you don't need to do anything to become worthy. You don't need anybody to recognize your value to become worthy. It just is. It is what you are. And so I want you to move in that. I want you to ask yourself, how can you continue to stand in your power? How can you continue to remind yourself of your worthiness? How can you continue to remove the blocks to you remembering your value? How can you get back to that state as a little kid when you put the Superman cape and tied it around your neck and jumped off the sofa and crashed into the dining room table? How can you get back to that person that understood their value simply because they were here? And so, yeah, we all just need to remember. And I hope that blesses you today. I want you to move forward into your week, understanding that you're worthy and thinking about how you're showing up in the world and how you can continue to make worthiness your dominant state.